In this Whiteboard Leadership Moment, we're talking about the 4 cornerstones of culture. We could talk about motivation, celebration, modeling, and training. Today we're talking about celebration. Again, culture is the defining set of attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors of a given group of people. It's so important. Peter Drucker says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. In other words, you can have the best ideas, the best strategies, the best tactics, but if the culture isn't strong, that culture will overwhelm any kind of strategy or tactic you might have. Like I said, today we're talking about celebration. Celebration should be your favorite of the 4 cornerstones because it's the most exciting. It's proof of what God has done in your ministry. Whether it be evangelism or generosity or worship or prayer, we want to identify the things that God is doing so that people do it more and more. Because celebration is a signal that says we are winning. Celebration answers the question, when? When do we know that we've started to move forward? When do we know that we have arrived? And celebration is such a powerful part of every culture. Here's some things to think about. First of all, we need to identify and leverage the celebration channels that the church or the organization has. Every organization celebrates something, and every organization celebrates some way. So what do you celebrate, and how do you celebrate it? Anything you give time to, for example, on the weekend, is a celebration. Some of us give celebration to the children's ministry because we talk about the need for more workers. Or we celebrate baptisms as they are performed in the service. Or we celebrate worship because the songs are so inspiring. But whatever is there in front of people is a celebration of the weekend. Your website, your newsletters, your communiques, your testimonies, the stories in the sermon are all channels of celebration. You should make a list of all the ways that you have to communicate and celebrate, and then figure out how do we leverage those things best. Next, consider creating a capture mechanism for celebrations. Maybe there's a value or a priority that you want to focus on. The question you have to ask is, how will we capture the stories behind those things? Stories are one of the best ways to celebrate, and to capture stories is one of the hardest parts of the church. So if you're a pastor and you receive an email and it's an encouraging email, don't just keep it to yourself. Decide whether that's some way to celebrate with others. Share it with your staff or share it with the congregation. If there's a story in your church, maybe, for example, if you have a small group system or a Sunday school system, when those leaders get together, why don't you incorporate a time of sharing during those times where they can say, hey, what's the best thing that happened in your group or in your Sunday school class over this past season? And capture those stories. In your staff meetings, do a celebration of what God is doing and have someone writing down the stories. And this is a great way, again, to capture those celebration opportunities. Another thing to think about is always link it to life change. Whatever the value is, whatever's happening, link it to life change. For example, with generosity, when someone gives, and the result is they give to a camp or a retreat or whatever, and someone comes to Christ, then you want to link their giving to people coming to Christ. Their serving to people coming to Christ. Their praying to people coming to Christ. Their worship to people coming to Christ. I hope that makes sense to you. Link it to life change because people want to make a difference. Celebrate actions that lead to the result. We at the church, and we're really good at celebrating the result. We may say we had 1,000 people or 100 people at Easter, and it's a really high number for our church, and we'll celebrate the result of 100 or 1,000, but we never celebrate the actions that led the result. The actions are what is repeatable. For example, if you had a bunch of new people at church, you may want to tell a story about someone in the church who had the boldness to invite their neighbor, their coworker, their relative, their friend, their classmate. And make sure that you tell the stories of ordinary people and not those people who are giants in the faith. Leaders like it big, but everyone else needs it small. Talk about the ordinary person who's normally timid, inviting their neighbor to come, or someone who has not been outspoken that actually speaks out in their faith. Just consider ordinary people and talk about the ordinary Joe, not the amazing people that are in the church. But link that action to life change and celebrate the action that led to the result. It was the inviting that resulted in them coming and hearing the gospel and responding to the gospel. So as you're celebrating decisions for Christ, talk about the number of people that decided to follow Christ, but talk about the one person who invited their neighbor, their coworker, their relative, their friend, or their classmate. Point it out in real time. A lot of times we think about things as only in the sermon celebrations. But when you see it actually happening in front of you, there's nothing better than, did you see that? I mean, think about it in Luke chapter 21 when Jesus is at the temple and this woman gives her 2 copper coins. He said, did you see that? He pointed out in real time. Find people doing something right. We always find people doing things wrong. Let's find them doing things right and pointing out in real time. And then finally, remember this. What gets celebrated gets repeated because people want to win. They want to do the right thing. And when you celebrate, people say, I want to join in the celebration, and I want people to celebrate what God is doing in my life as well. This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.